In 1991, a young family settled into a small apartment in Manhattan. One after another, they had 7 children. The parents gave all of them names in Sanskrit, one of the oldest languages in the world, hinting that unique children from an unusual family needed equally unusual conditions. The father of the family decided to create his own clan, and here's what came of it. Let's start with the mother of the family. Susan Reisendis was born in the American Midwest. She grew up playing on the sand dunes that surrounded her home. Susan spent a lot of time in nature and in the mountains, and over the years her love of freedom only grew stronger. She began traveling not only around her home country, but also abroad. One day, Susan ended up in Peru. She embarked on a journey along the Inca Trail, a popular tourist route leading to Machu Picchu. Her guides were a group of mountain tourists who knew the area well, and often led foreigners along this path. One of these tourists was named Oscar Angulo, and it was love at first sight. A whirlwind romance began between Oscar and Susan. They got married just a few months after meeting and lived as nomads for many years. The romantics settled in a van, constantly moving from place to place. They had no permanent home. The road became their home. For some time, Oscar and Susan lived in a Hare Krishna religious community, which is considered a closed spiritual organization in many countries. This organization is a kind of Hinduism that has a very strict structure within the community. Despite finding good friends there, Susan and Oscar eventually left the community and set off on the road again. Stability was like a swamp to them. However, in 1991, they had to part with their freedom of travel. The couple had their first child, a girl. The baby was born with a rare genetic disorder called Turner syndrome. The parents named her Vishnu, after a Hindu deity. Oscar decided to give all his children names exclusively in Sanskrit. He remained an adherent of Hinduism, though he stopped participating in the Krishna community. Sanskrit is considered by some to be the first language in the world, which the young parents liked very much, as it emphasized the uniqueness of their children. By 1999, the couple had 7 children, one after another. Oscar had always dreamed of moving somewhere in Scandinavia because he really liked the north, the European mentality, and the people. However, this dream was not destined to come true. Instead, the Angulo family moved to the Seward Park housing complex in Manhattan. From the windows of their 4-room apartment of 92 square meters, there was a view of New York skyscrapers. This residential complex was something like social housing for low-income families. There were more than 800 residents in this building. Soon after moving, Oscar began to change, not for the better. Looking at the panorama of New York, he began to realize that the world was not the kindest and friendliest place. He had always been wary of people and preached a fairly closed religion, and now his paranoia only intensified. He feared that, when his 7 children grew up, they would go down the wrong path and the harsh world would trample them. There were only dangerous people around. Whether he took these beliefs from his own life, or was simply an anxious parent, remains unknown. What is known for certain is that he considered himself special. He thought he knew something that everyone else didn't, as if he possessed secret knowledge. He nursed these ideas for a very long time, but finally, in another paranoid fit, Oscar decided that only he himself could protect his family from the harmful influence of the outside world. And he would do it like this. Oscar would lock his entire family at home, keeping the key to the front door only for himself. For this, he created a list of rules that all residents of the apartment had to follow. Here are just some of them. You cannot cut your hair, because hair contains all of a person's energy and strength. You cannot communicate with anyone, not even neighbors. Certain topics cannot be discussed. No one can be let into the house. You cannot leave the apartment and go outside. Why? Because, quote, there are bad people and a bad world out there that wishes only evil upon the brothers and their sister. By 1999, the Angulo family already had 7 children, and all of them would grow up in the strictest isolation. Most of them had been born in that very apartment, and the parents didn't even know when each of them was born. They simply didn't write it down. First was Vishnu. After her came a boy named Bhagavan. Then twins were born, boys Narayana and Govinda. Then 3 more sons appeared, Mukunda, Krishna, and Jagadisa. As they grew up, they knew nothing about what was happening outside. They had never seen the sea, the endless sky, or forests. They had never been to a restaurant and had never seen animals or other people. They did nothing that ordinary children do every day. They didn't play ball, didn't jump over cracks in the sidewalk, didn't build forts, didn't run in the rain. Their world was extremely small, closed, and full of fear. With Oscar's prompting, they believed that the outside world was very cruel and dangerous, and that they really were better off at home. Oscar demanded that his wife follow the rules too. Susan was forbidden to communicate with relatives. She cut off contact with them so suddenly that they had to hire a private detective to find out where she was and whether she was even alive. For any transgression, Oscar literally subjected her to interrogation. According to one of the couple's sons, Susan had it hardest of all. She had no control over her own life. Oscar controlled her, and she felt she had no way out. None of the children attended traditional school. They were homeschooled by their mother, and Susan received government payments for home lessons. She held lessons for them every day and gave them assignments, and she handled it very, very well. Oscar didn't work at all. The family lived on unemployment benefits and social payments, including payments for home education, so it can be assumed that all the children, or at least some of them, were registered, and the government was aware of at least their existence. Without work, Oscar hardly needed to leave home. Only occasionally did he go to the store for groceries, but this happened very rarely. He would stock up for several weeks at once. A creepy atmosphere reigned in the apartment. The family continued practices adopted from the community, but Oscar adapted all these practices for himself, turning his own family into a new closed community. He wanted to have as many children as possible. After the birth of his 7th son, he even chose names for 3 more. However, Susan could no longer get pregnant, and the couple had to stop. The whole family slept together on mattresses on the floor. The brothers literally had to sleep on top of each other. But fortunately, there were relatively bright moments at home too. The whole family danced together. This can be seen in footage from the family archive. Often the children, together with their mother, looked out the window at the city and imagined they were on top of a mountain, and the other skyscrapers were mountain ridges. Susan told them about her childhood, about how she played with friends in nature, about how she climbed the sand dunes. The sons listened to her stories with bated breath and immersed themselves in their imagination. Long years passed this way, and Oscar kept inventing new rules for his family. For example, the children often played loudly in the apartment, rolled around the corridor on rollerblades, and tried somehow to release their pent-up energy. Oscar began to think that the neighbors might hear them and call social services, who would come to inspect. He naturally didn't want everyone to know about his family, so Oscar forbade his wife and children from entering rooms whose walls were shared with neighbors. One of these rooms was a fairly spacious living room. They also couldn't use one of the bathrooms. Sometimes Oscar would lock everyone in one of the rooms and order them to sit quietly, not making a sound. But a few times the family did leave the house. This happened by Oscar's decision. One year in summer, everyone went together to a city park. However, looking around and observing other people was forbidden. In winter, going outside was not allowed at all. Once, the entire family except Oscar didn't go outside for a whole year. In all these restrictions, there was one exception. In the Angulo home, you could watch movies, though only those films that Oscar himself brought. But this was already enough. Cinema became a kind of window into normal life. The boys and their sister began to perceive films as manifestations of real life, which helped them socialize, in a sense, to learn how people communicate, resolve conflicts, behave in different situations, and even simply how they dress. During their confinement, They watched thousands of films. They knew some movies literally by heart, as they rewatched them dozens of times. They copied dialogue and scripts by hand into a special notebook. Then, using this notebook, the children acted out scenes, imitating blockbuster heroes and the situations the characters found themselves in. They memorized lines by heart, and sometimes recreated scenes from popular films shot for shot on a home camera. They played the main roles themselves and were then their own audience. Their sister participated in watching films, but due to her condition, she couldn't actively perform on camera with them. The children built sets and made guns and costumes, and film characters became their real friends. This taught the boys to experience emotions and understand the world and people. Soon they were already inventing their own short films, shooting and acting out scenes right in the apartment. Quentin Tarantino's film Reservoir Dogs became one of their favorites. The boys wore, without taking them off, the same suits and hats as the film's heroes. Cinema became their religion. They watched films day and night, dreaming of the big world outside their windows. Mukunda became the main enthusiast. He liked films most of all. He built sets, noticed every detail, and replicated the actors' movements, their gait and facial expressions. He was naturally very talented at this. Plus, with the amount of free time the children had, there was no need to limit their flight of imagination. But still, the children wanted real life. When all the boys were roughly in their teenage years, Oscar began to notice that they were looking out the window longer and more thoughtfully, thinking about life beyond the apartment. They began asking him questions about the world, about life, about people. But instead of giving them answers, Oscar came up with a rather simple and convenient solution. He completely covered all the windows with curtains. They couldn't be opened under any circumstances for many long months. Now not even sunlight entered the apartment. Eternal twilight settled in the rooms. Soon, from lack of vitamin D, many family members developed low mood and fatigue, and the boys began to seriously think about escape. In the fall of 2010, Oscar went to the store for groceries as usual. His trips to the store were very long. He was gone for at least 3 hours. Knowing this, 15-year-old Mukunda, whose name, by the way, translates as liberator, decided to make his first independent exit from home. He got dressed and took from the closet of costumes for home filming a Michael Myers masked villain from the Halloween film series. This was how he decided to protect himself from his father and other curious eyes. Mukunda thought that without the mask he would definitely attract a lot of attention, but in the mask he would be unnoticeable. Apparently, he knew how to pick the lock, so he opened the front door, looked back at his brothers, and stepped into the unknown. Mukunda ran to the stairs and rushed down 16 floors in just a couple of minutes. Soon he was outside. His heart was pounding. His eyes squinted from the bright light. The young man had never been on the street alone. Everything here was new and scary to him. The world was filled with new sounds, smells, people. He walked along the street, turned into an alley, walked further, but constantly looked around, understanding that if he lost sight of his building, he would simply get lost. Trying his best to remember the way back, he nevertheless decided to go into a store and then a pharmacy. Passers-by didn't really pay attention to the strange teenager in a horror movie mask after all. This was happening in New York, which has seen worse. Encouraged by his feat, Mukunda then for some reason went to a bank. There, employees quickly pressed the alarm button, thinking it was a robber. Since the boy didn't respond to the demands of the arriving officers, he was quickly arrested and sent by ambulance to a hospital for evaluation. The boy was thrilled by everything happening. Police, an ambulance with flashing lights, and so many people. He had only seen this in the movies, but from the overwhelming emotions, he couldn't speak or objectively assess what was happening. But, I repeat, he perceived it all as a crazy adventure. Mukunda was kept in the hospital for a week, as they listened to his story about leaving home for the first time. During this time, he managed to make friends with other patients, and he actually liked the hospital. He was finally sleeping in his own bed, alone, not in a stuffy little room together with his brothers. Eventually, he was released to go home. Mukunda no longer posed a threat to society. He was very afraid of returning to his father, knowing that he would surely be angry. During that week away, Mukunda understood that there was nothing scary in the big world. However, he still decided to return to his brothers. When the young man knocked on the door of his home, his mother greeted him as a hero, having prepared lasagna, his favorite dish. His father, of course, was furious, but now it was all over for him. His authority had crumbled. He had completely lost control over the family. Keeping 6 grown young men in such a small apartment for them would simply be impossible. Mukunda honestly told his father that he refused to play by his rules and wouldn't stay home for another day. He was leaving, and his brothers were leaving with him, along with their sister and mother. He no longer considered Oscar his father. In response, Oscar didn't say a word. He surprisingly calmly accepted his defeat, perhaps understanding that his dictatorship had to come to an end sometime anyway. Mukunda had won, and now all the boys began going outside. For their outings, they dressed like the characters from Reservoir Dogs in hats, dark glasses, and suits. They went out into the city knowing they looked a bit strange, but they even liked it. They became a real pack, always walking together, not falling behind each other so as not to get lost in the huge city. They went to the beach, saw the sky and trees for the first time in their lives, and despite the fact that their father constantly said the world was terrible, nothing bad happened to them. In their first week of freedom, the boys dressed in formal suits and dark glasses were noticed on the street by a young woman. She caught up with them and introduced herself. Her name was Crystal Moselle, and she was a director and cinematographer. She was attracted by the boys' appearance, how they walked like a real pack, learning that they were connected to the world of cinema. The brothers, of course, decided to talk to her. Crystal became their first friend and even began teaching them the basics of filmmaking. Then she became the first person they invited to their home. The young woman was very surprised to learn that before this, they had never let anyone in. Eventually, Crystal offered to film the boys for a documentary. Here they are riding bicycles for the first time. Here they're riding a train. Here they're swimming for the first time, not knowing how to swim. The young woman would spend more than a year with them, and from her footage would come a real documentary film. It's hard to believe, but social services never came to the father of the family. Only once did police burst into the family's apartment. They had received information that weapons were stored in their home, but the weapons turned out to be the boys' homemade props. So the boys with Sanskrit names continued to build their lives in freedom. At some point, the brothers realized that the real world was different from the movies, much more complicated than it seemed. People don't understand each other with half a word like in films, don't behave according to a script, and events in life don't develop as quickly as in movies. You could say reality even disappointed them in some ways, but there was nowhere to go. This was their new life. Some of the boys cut their long hair as a sign that their old life was behind them. They started dressing differently, and some even changed their names. But they never went to regular school. The younger ones continued studying at home with their mother. Susan herself, the mother of the children, was also able to return to a normal life. She finally called her mother and told her why she had disappeared for so long. She and the children went to visit relatives, and they had a great time. Susan also changed her last name back to her maiden name. All this time, Crystal documented every small step of the family. The resulting film was called The Wolfpack. The boys had always considered themselves a pack, inseparable, one for all and all for one. This documentary received many awards at various film festivals. After the premiere, the brothers began traveling, presenting the film in different countries. They flew on an airplane for the first time, went to Europe and to the West Coast to Los Angeles. The boys even met stars of the films they had adored while locked in their apartment. For example, they were arranged a dinner with Robert De Niro himself. The boys are still very grateful to Mukunda, who on that autumn day dared to leave the apartment and thereby save them all. It may seem surprising, but the young men adapted very well to the outside world despite everything they went through. Probably they have very strong nervous systems that confinement and deprivation couldn't break. After all, they were never alone. The boys had and have each other, and that's the most important thing. As for their father, he never answered for his actions. The only punishment he suffered was that his children disowned him. Some of the boys say they've already forgotten his name, while other brothers have forgiven their father but don't want to have anything to do with him. Today, all the brothers and their sister live quiet lives, and each of them does what they love. Bhagavan is a yoga and dance instructor. Narayana, who took the new name Joseph, became an environmental advocate. Govinda is a cinematographer and the only one who maintains any contact with their father. Mukunda works in the film industry. He has tried his hand at producing and acting. Krishna and Jagadisa are musicians. Together, the boys founded their own film company, which has already released 3 short films. Their mother Susan, who by the way is still not officially divorced from Oscar, began helping families in difficult situations. Little is known about the boys' sister Vishnu. She prefers to stay out of the spotlight, and the brothers say they communicate with her in a language understood only by them, a language of feelings and emotions. They often give interviews and are active on social media. During the general quarantine, for example, they talked about how difficult it was to go through lockdown, even though a state of isolation was familiar to them. Mukunda spoke at TED and talked about the power of imagination, that it was imagination that helped him not go crazy, but on the contrary, gave him the opportunity to develop his talents. I think the boys were very lucky that their father gave up so easily. How many stories have we heard about controlling parents, and only some of them voluntarily let their children go to live their own lives?